Hey everybody, Adam Tracy again, and I get all sorts of questions about what happens when my bank account gets closed, and obviously the banks don't give you a reason, but you can presume it has something to do with crypto or something else. And the problem is that banks, in particular under the Bank Secrecy Act, there really aren't clear guidelines as to why or how a bank can close an account, or how long they can hold your funds, or what are your rights and obligations once this happens and what happens afterwards. So let's go through it real quick. One, if you read the Bank Secrecy Act, which I wouldn't encourage you to do, but the Bank Secrecy Act and the promulgating regulations aren't specific in terms of what reason a bank can use to close your account, right? And the bank's own terms can also dictate that, because you are entering into a contract with that bank, but it can really be open-ended, and the Bank Secrecy Act specifically states that the bank doesn't have to tell you why. Right. So you get a letter and says, hey, we're going to close your account in 30 days, or they just close it without notice, but they don't have to tell you why. And if you could call them, they're not going to tell you anyway. Right. You could probably surmise, but if you really get into like the niceties of the Bank Secrecy Act, you realize, and really the big thing in the Bank Secrecy Act is the filing of SARS reports, suspicious activity reports. And if you look at the reasons why a financial institution would file one, overwhelmingly, right, with the exception of a few that relate to different kinds of cash transactions to which there's a number attributed, they're very qualitative, meaning like they're not numerically driven. So in one instance, a SARS report is required if a customer is being evasive about the reason for withdrawing cash or depositing cash. Or again, the word evasive, if a customer is evasive about or asking questions about reporting requirements, meaning like if I deposit $15,000, will you file a SARS report? And so there's really no clear delineation, right? And in most cases, when they close your account, and any of the big banks, if you have deposits coming from like a Coinbase or what have you, eventually it's going to happen, right? Almost certainly, unless you're just such a big customer they don't care. And that's purely driven by AML issues, because it's know your customer's customer, right? They don't know where you got the crypto from, even though Coinbase does its own KYC and everything like that. It doesn't matter, right? So that's the impetus for it. But it gets confusing when they hold your money, right? And this has happened especially in larger dollar amounts to like many OTC traders, for instance, right? What happens? Like, how can I get my money back? Well, again, the Bank Secrecy Act doesn't say you have to get it back within 90 days, nor does any other law say that, or 120 days, or whatever the case may be. What it says is, as long as the bank or financial institution is still investigating the suspicious activity, it can withhold your funds from you. Now that can be years, presumably, right? And depending on the amount of money, would you just sit there and say, okay, well, my $2 million, I guess they'll send it back to me sometime? Probably not. You'd probably litigate it, right? But if it's 5 or 10, it's not worth it, right? You'll pay more to get the money back. And they may have a legitimate reason to hold it as long as they have, by just simply stating we're slow at investigating whatever it is. So you really can't force their hand. And again, the banks are protected by the Bank Secrecy Act in the sense that they don't have to tell you why they're doing it. So the reality is, when it happens, you have very, very little recourse absent going to court and litigating where the numbers make sense. And I wouldn't even consider doing it if the numbers did make sense until an appreciable amount of time has passed, like 6 months. Because again, as long as this investigation is going on, whatever that means, which could literally mean any form of investigation, right? And it could mean that, hey, JP Morgan's just backed up. We haven't got around to filing a SARS report about, your $12 deposit from Binance, right? It's like, it's crazy, but that's how it is. So, absent finding a bank that is truly crypto friendly, odds are this is probably going to happen if you have any appreciable crypto activity, right? And again, you'll never know why, and there's nothing you really do about it. But the longer lasting ramification, right, isn't so much the fact that you lost a bank account, because there are crypto friendly banks out there, right? And in the corporate context, like if you're running an exchange or you register as an MSB and doing OTC, there's even more options for crypto friendly accounts. But when you're at like a Wells Fargo or some just, money center bank that is hostile to crypto and they close your account, well, then you go on early warning. And early warning is just like TransUnion or Equifax. It's a credit rating bureau, but was created to sort of replace check systems, right? And it's like this credit report of your banking system. So the fun fact is when you Zelle and when you sign up for Zelle, you give early warning, full reign to look into every transaction you have ever made in the past or in the future in that account, right? So when you use Zelle, it's free. But think about it. Why is it free? Why would it be free? Banks charge you nickel and dime for everything, like everything, but they're gonna let you transfer money for free? It makes no sense, right? Well, this is how they get your data, right? And early warning, right? Which, you can't buy your early warning report. You have to literally go to the website and they send it to you in like weeks, but they keep a record. So every time some bank closes your account for quote unquote suspicious activity, it goes on that report. And then when you go to the next bank to open the account, they run that report and they don't open the account, right? So, and just like credit, TransUnion, Equifax, credit repair, you can actually do the same thing to early warning, right? And the onus and burden to prove that the derogatory mark is actually on early warning, and in my experience, they're pretty bad at actually responding, which is an automatic deletion, but that's perhaps another discussion for another time. So, the lingering effect isn't so much the loss of a bank account, because there's a lot of banks out there. It's the fact that you're going to get dinged in early warning, which is going to make it more difficult to open an account at whatever bank, even if it's crypto friendly, because they may use early warning as well, as most do. And of course, don't use Zelle, because all they're doing is just taking your data, and that's what you're giving them in exchange to save 25 cents like you would on Venmo transfers. So that's how to handle and what to do when your crypto activity shuts down your bank account. Hit me up as usual with questions, adam@adamtracy.io, and I'll check you out next time. Cheers.